Would you take time to introduce yourself?
Sure. So my name's Tibbs. Live here in Llano. We've lived here for about 2.5 years. I have 3 children. Been married to my wife, Robin. We've been married 21 years this April. We got married young. I was 21 when I got married. 3 kids. Taylor, he's 15. Reagan, she's 12, and then Trent, he's 11. And I retired from the military in 2020, right when COVID was going on. I was in the Navy. I joined the Navy right out of high school, and I actually went to school at Lake Travis, and Llano was even in our school district back then. I think Lake Travis is like a big 5A school now. So I served in the Navy for 21 years. I was a cryptologic linguist. I was a Hebrew linguist in the Navy. About 1.5 years after I had joined the Navy, I finished my initial training of the language school in Monterey, California in 2000. And in March of 2001, I was in a motorcycle accident in San Angelo, Texas, where I just transferred to. I'd only been there for about 2 months. And in that, I lost my right leg below the knee on March 5th, 2001. And kind of short to sum it all up, I was able to stay on active duty. I went through aircrew school. I went through SEER school. Did all my normal training, deployed, went to Afghanistan, served there for about 7-8 months. Served all over the world. And during the same time, I also competed in Paralympic Games in 2004 and the 2008 Paralympic Games. The first one was in Athens, Greece, and the second one was in Beijing. And at each games, I was able to win 2 medals. I won a gold medal in each, in the 4x100 relay, and then a silver and a bronze medal in different events. So, and my wife and I, we got married in 2002 in California, and we've moved all over. We've lived California, Texas, Georgia, yeah, and now we're here in Llano.
Yeah. So that injury was life-changing. What made you think that you could do Paralympics?
Well, it's actually funny because I have a connection to that with here in Llano. That I remember I won my first district track meet in the hurdles actually in this. It was either 6th or 7th grade here in Llano. Lake Travis and Llano were in the same district then. And so track and field was kind of my thing. I loved track and field. I was decent at it. I didn't like the training for it in high school. I didn't really know what it took for training either until I started pursuing my Paralympic stuff. But when I first saw the Paralympic Games, I read an article of the 2000 Sydney Olympics and the Paralympic Games, and I read an article about a few other amputees who had lost their legs or they were born without a limb, and they were talking about their experience, and it was in Sydney, Australia. And that's, I mean, the second I started reading the article, I knew I wanted to pursue it. I knew that's something I was going to do, and that was in late 2002, maybe 2003, when I found out about the Paralympics. Mm-hmm. And I'd only been an amputee for about a year and a half. So it's one thing to know, okay, I want to start running, but as an amputee, I had to, go through the process of getting a running prosthetic, making sure that it was aligned right, and the technology then, even though it was still really great compared to what prosthetics have been, for centuries mm-hmm. before that. But not too many amputees had running prosthetics for that. They hadn't been around for more than like 10 years.
Right.
In fact, today they're even better than when I started. It was kind of one of those instantaneous things. I've always, anytime I've seen something that I've kind of always been I've always known right away, this is what I want to do, this is what God's calling me to do, and I'm going to pursue it. Same thing with military things, and same thing with my job now in real estate too.
So you still stayed on active duty after your accident, losing your leg. Most people would use that as an excuse to feel like a victim. How does your response different than somebody who would say they were victimized by the situation?
Well, when I lost my leg, the Navy gave me 3 months to rehabilitate after I got out of the hospital, and to come back and to finish the rest of my training, or they were going to decide whether to medical board me and separate me. I went to go live with my grandfather and my grandmother in Oklahoma City at the time, and they've always been huge positive people in my life since I was a little kid. My mom and dad divorced when I was 1, and I went to live with my mom, and she remarried. So I didn't have a horrible childhood or anything. It's just my grandparents on my dad's side were always sort of rocks and mentors in my life. And my grandfather, they didn't want me to. They were very much about me finishing my career in the Navy, and they pushed me towards that. And once I started thinking that way, that hey, I'm just going to stay on active duty, and I can't let this thing, stop me from doing it, unless the Navy says we're not going to let you stay on active duty. And I knew I was going to have to pass the PT test and pass all the physical standards, as soon as possible if I was going to stay on active duty. And that's what I did.
Wow. So you didn't let your injury define you or limit you. How hard was the mental side of prepping for the Paralympic Games?
That was tough, because I didn't really. At first I thought, I could do this. I knew I was athletic, but I had no idea the level of competition. I didn't really let it affect me at all. I had to just start at the bottom and work my way up. And I competed as much as I could. I even went to some high school meets, I think, and I was an adult, just seeing if I could run in a race where I could get timed with an official time to try to get into some other track meets that I could go and compete with. But so I had to show humility to just start at the bottom and work my way up. I wasn't going to let any of the roadblocks or any of the speed bumps stop me from trying to achieve, making it to the Paralympic Games in Greece.
Besides your grandparents that you mentioned, what other support system have you had that's allowed you to be successful overcoming a lot of adversity?
My wife, Robin. We dated before I lost my leg, and then I transferred, and then we ended up getting stationed back together after I lost my leg, which, if you go through all the things in my life, you can see where God has had his hand in making sure I was in the right place at the right time. And I believe he does that for everybody if you allow him. But my wife she's always supported me. If in the military it hadn't been easy, there was a period of time where not only was I deploying and working, deploying for 8 months out of the year, or go for 3 months and then come home for a month. Robin was, during the time when we were having our babies, between the middle child and the youngest child, I was only home for a few months. And so I would come home, she'd have the baby. She never once said, no, please don't go. She knew that I had a job to do in the Navy, and I had an obligation to serve my country. So that was never a factor. And she also served too. She was in the Navy too for 6 years. And then sometimes I'd come home, I'd go right back. I'd be training for the next Paralympic or World Championships, once I got to where I was competing professionally, I would get invited to track meets all over the world, all over Europe, Turkey, New Zealand, Japan. Just so I'd be coming home from deploying, and then I'd go do track meets or to try to keep my status as a Paralympian. So my wife, she's the one that's put up with everything.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's awesome. So you've been in Lano for about 2.5 years,
Yeah.
and so you've gotten to know a lot of the kids,
Yeah.
and from your kids' friends and things like that. And what would you say to kids in Lano that may be facing some kind of adversity? What would you tell them that would be something that they can at least put in their pocket and help them get through?
That's a tough question, because everybody handles things differently. I would say surround yourself with positive people in your life, and if you can't find some positive people, just find one. You're going to find them in the church, and if you can't find them in the church, then just keep looking. Find a better church. I think that's the most important thing. You've got to have somebody in your life who supports you and tells you what you need to hear, not just what you want to hear, but tells you what you need to hear.
Yeah.